Hi everyone, thanks for watching this episode of Vroom Fume. I'm Ryan, and today I'm going to be talking about a very trending issue in terms of cases owners are reporting, and it's going to be about Ford's 1.5, 1.6, 2.0, and 2.3 liter EcoBoost inline fours. And this issue not only affects so many other people, it even affects me as well. I'm sitting in the Lincoln MKC, which has a 2-liter, which is affected by this issue. And I'm going to be talking about the problem with them blowing head gaskets and coolant being burned. So before I get too in depth, in case if you don't know what the 2-liter... Oh, and another thing, I'm going to be focusing more on the 2-liter because that's what I have more experience in and knowledge in. But this also applies to the 1.5, 1.6, and 2.3 as well. So just a real quick overview what the 2-liter EcoBoost is. It's a turbocharged inline 4-cylinder engine found in many Ford and Lincoln vehicles, including other automakers who've had a previous partnership with Ford, such as Volvo, Land Rover, and Jaguar back in the day. The 2-liter's roots can be traced back to about 2010 when it debuted in the Ford S-Max, Galaxy Mondeo, and Volvo's S60, V60, and V70. And to avoid some initial confusion, there are two variants of the 1.5-liter EcoBoost. There's a 4-cylinder and a 3-cylinder. The 4-cylinder is the one that has a defective block and head gasket design, like the other variants I mentioned. But the head gasket issues appear to be absent for the 3-cylinder because the 3-cylinder is a totally different engine, totally different block and design, even though they have almost identical displacements. So there's about 2 generations of the 2-liter. There's a first gen that was built upon, from what I've read, Mazda's L series engine, which Ford tweaked in the form of a different head, fuel injection system, and variable valve timing design. But when Mazda's partnership ended, Ford had to redesign their 2-liter nearly from scratch to form what is now the second gen 2-liter. Noteworthy changes in the second gen include a new aluminum block, which is what the problem is with this head gasket issue, redesigned cylinder heads, an increased compression ratio, and I believe the common name that refers to the second gen is twin scroll, because the turbocharger is now a twin scroll one. So, okay, getting to the issue. So, the 2-liter, I mean, they do have their quirks and their flaws, but they are relatively reliable engines, particularly the first gen. Particularly with Ford Fusions, if you go on any used car site, you will find many of them that have exceeded 100,000 miles. I was able to find a 2015 which had the first gen that had just under 220,000 miles. And when I examined the Carfax, I didn't find any records that the engine had been replaced. And my friend up the street has a 2016 Ford Fusion Titanium. 2016, that was, I believe, the last year they used the first gen. 2017 is when they used the faulty second gen. But he has almost 120,000 miles. He bought it when it had like 93,000 miles, and he's told me he's never had any issues with it. So they are fairly reliable engines for the most part. So, unfortunately, that can't really be said about the second gen due to what's becoming a notorious head gasket failure, resulting in coolant leaking into the combustion chamber, which ultimately requires replacing the engine. And the thing that's really sad about this problem is that this head gasket failure can occur at incredibly low mileage, which makes this issue even more frustrating for owners. So specifically, the issue involves the engine's open deck long block design. So part of the cooling jackets, which for this engine are designed or also include large narrow slits laying in between the cylinder walls, can allow coolant to leak into the combustion chamber and be burned when the head gaskets start to go. Now, beginning around mid-2019, Ford claimed they stopped using this open deck design and is instead now using a, I have in here solid block. I believe it's a closed block, or at least semi-closed block, or whatever, solid block design with the slit. It's now the size of a tiny little pinhole, which is directing coolant, through the jacket. So rather than running it through an unnecessarily wide opening in between each cylinder, it now travels to a much smaller spot on the cylinder head, which greatly reduces the risk of the coolant penetrating the head gasket and leaking into the combustion chamber. And when the leaking does occur, it's usually in the very middle of the engine, between cylinders 2 and 3. So, unfortunately, nothing can be done to prevent this problem. It is a design flaw. There is no amount of maintenance that you can do to prevent this. It's just a design flaw. It is a huge oversight. But fortunately, there is an easy way to know if your vehicle is affected by this issue. And it's as simple as just removing the oil cap. If the vehicle's head gasket is blown, inside the oil cap will be a gross brown, milky, and watery substance looking like chocolate milk. But if the underside of the oil cap is clean, it could still be possible coolant is being gradually burned without any physical leaks, and it's likely that it is being burned, but at a slow rate. And with time, the leak will become progressively more, which will result in misfiring, which would cause the check engine light to illuminate. And that leads me to another point. So if your oil cap is clean, you don't have that yucky, brown, milky substance, then another way is to just check the coolant reservoir level and just monitor it over a few months. And if the level is gradually decreasing, but you don't have physical leaks, and the coolant is going somewhere, because coolant is not just supposed to disappear. So, yeah. So if it's steadily decreasing over time, then most likely you are burning coolant, which maybe not a ton of it at the moment, but over time it will get worse. Another symptom to look for is thick white exhaust smoke, which is another sign of coolant burning. Now, if you have thin, wispy smoke at startup, that's usually caused by just harmless condensation during the colder months, so don't worry too much about that. But if it's white and thick and there's a lot of it, then that can indicate a blown head gasket. And if the exhaust has more of a blue tint, then that means oil burning. Let's see here. Yeah, so the solution to permanently fix this issue is to install a new engine with the updated block design. So if your vehicle requires this repair and is out of warranty, like most people, it can range anywhere from $4,000 to $9,000 to have this fixed, assuming the dealership performs the work. So it is not a cheap fix. But fortunately, it is claimed that Ford began using an updated block design after mid-2019 for all 4-cylinder EcoBoosts, being I believe a 2020 model year or newer, should be immune to this problem. They shouldn't have this issue because the block is redesigned. But only time will tell if Ford's fix is an actual fix. So when it comes to should you buy a vehicle with this engine, the short answer is no, you shouldn't, unless if the block has already been replaced, and you know that for an absolute fact. I'm sitting in a 2018 Lincoln MKC Black Label with the 2-liter EcoBoost I-4, which I believe it kind of differs. The affected years kind of differ between each variant, but for the 2-liter, I believe it's 2017 is when this bad block was used, and it ended after 2019. I did not know about this problem before we purchased the vehicle. I was well aware of it for the 1.6. I had no idea it even applied to the 2.0. I don't know how I didn't know that because I'm usually very good at research. But yeah, so as of now, this MKC has around 33,000 miles at the time I'm writing this. And within the last 4 months, I have noticed the coolant, it is decreasing. Slowly. It used to be at the full mark. Now it's at about the half mark. So coolant, and I mean, there's no leak, so obviously it's going somewhere it shouldn't be going. When I remove the oil cap is clean. It's not chocolate milk underneath, so that's a good sign. But I do believe that the coolant is being burned because it gradually is losing coolant, which is not normal. That should never happen. Yeah, I also have no white exhaust smoke either, with the exception of some condensation since it is becoming winter where I am. I don't have any thick white exhaust smoke, which is good, but because it is decreasing from the reservoir tank, I am pretty confident that coolant is being burned. And had I've known about this issue, we would not have purchased the vehicle, even though we absolutely, I mean, we love this car. We really do. My gripe is that it really isn't very good on gas, but it's very powerful, very comfortable, bells and whistles up the wazoo. I mean, it really is a beautiful car. It truly is. But had I known about this issue, it would not be in our garage. We would not have bought it, which is really unfortunate. So just a few more things. One of the most, kind of what I said a little earlier, one of the most unfortunate aspects about this issue is that it can occur at very low mileage. The lowest I've seen was 28,000 miles, and that was a 2017 Ford Escape, and at least 2 failures occurred around 30,000 miles. Have also been reported being a 2018 Ford Escape and a 2019 Ford Edge. There's countless others. But interestingly, what's weird is some have experienced this at significantly higher mileage, such as above 60,000 miles or 110,000 miles. So it's really strange to me how you can have, assuming they both have the proper maintenance that the owners perform, it seems very weird to me that you can have two identical engines. One fails at 28, or one blows the head gasket at 28,000 miles, the other blows it at 110,000 miles. So that really doesn't make too much sense to me. I don't know why. And recently and I saw this firsthand, recently at my work, a gentleman came in. He had a 2017 Ford Edge. I believe it was an SEL. He came in because his check engine light turned on. We read the code. I believe it was a P0302, which was a cylinder 2 misfire. And our system recommended that he replace the spark plugs and the ignition coils. But because I'm aware of this issue, I asked him to pop the hood. The coolant reservoir tank, it wasn't full. It wasn't too low. It was maybe about, I don't know if you can even see, like maybe this low. Not really too bad. I mean, fuller than ours right now. But I removed the oil cap, and man, it was chocolate milk under there. I can look inside the oil cap, which you can actually see one of the camshafts, and it was just coated with this milky brown crap. So his head gasket was just blown. He only had 63,000 miles on his Edge, which actually he did pretty good considering I've seen Edges blow head gaskets as low as 28,000 miles. So 63,000, he got some decent life out of it. He bought the vehicle brand new, is what he told me. Never had any issue with it until that day when the check engine light came on, and I really regret to inform him that he needed a new engine. It's not fun telling someone that because that is thousands of dollars out of pocket. He told me he had no warranty left on it, so I don't know. Hopefully the dealer or Ford corporate will be willing to work with him on paying for some of the costs. But unfortunately, this poor gentleman, he's going to have to shell out thousands of dollars if he wants to keep driving his Ford Edge. Another interesting thing is with this head gasket problem is that despite many EcoBoost and naturally aspirated Ford engines sharing an identical looking open block design with the affected engines, only some variants suffer the head gasket issues. Another EcoBoost that shares what looks to be the same or very similar open block design that the 1.5, 1.6, 2.0, and 2.3 liter EcoBoost use is the 3.5, which is actually in the F-150. The 3.5 liter EcoBoost is heavily built upon the 3.5 liter Duratec V6. It uses the same open deck engine block design, but despite the 3.5 utilizing this open deck with the slits in between each cylinder, I have not really seen any reports of the 3.5 blowing head gaskets. It seems to be pretty much the 4 cylinders that are having this problem. I'm not exactly sure why. And another interesting thing is that for very high performance variants of the 3.5, they use a closed deck variant instead of an open deck. And it's also worth mentioning that an open deck design, open deck engine block design, that's not inherently a bad thing. And there are some benefits for an open deck design over a closed deck design. Usually, an open block design is used for lower horsepower, naturally aspirated engines, and it's cheaper to produce. Open deck designs, they also provide the best cooling efficiency due to the coolant's ability to make full contact with the surface of the upper portion of the cylinder. This cooling efficiency also helps with fuel economy. However, there are drawbacks to that block design, primarily the usual lack of structural support around the top of the cylinder walls. This is especially where support is needed the most, which makes open deck designs not ideal to be used in high performance applications utilizing high compression, turbocharging, or nitrous. But despite this downside, many automakers still create high performance engines using open deck designs. So just a little bit of opinion. Like with any engine problem, I always consider the possibility whether the automaker intentionally used a defective design just to generate more revenue from its service centers. And even though the deck design was changed to being open for the second gen and now being changed back to being closed as it was with the first gen, I hope Ford did not use this lousy design intentionally. But if you look on the internet, there are some Ford technicians that say the company was very well aware of this problem for years, but they still decided to mass produce engine blocks with this problem. And given that the 3.5 liter EcoBoost uses the same design with the open deck design with the slits in between each cylinder, but doesn't suffer head gasket problems nearly to the same extent, it kind of indicates that an open deck design, kind of like I said before, isn't necessarily a design flaw. It just so happens to cause many issues with specific EcoBoost engines, particularly the 4 cylinders. I don't know why, but it doesn't seem to affect the V6s at all. So if you're considering purchasing a Ford or Lincoln with the 1.5, 1.6, 2.0, or 2.3 liter EcoBoost before the 2020 model year, you'd have to look very specifically as to, for the model, let's see, how do I say this? Like, kind of what I said before, for the MKC, the bad blocks were used in 2017 through 2019, but the 2015 through 16 supposedly have the first gen design, whereas in a Ford Escape, it could be different years. So you have to kind of figure that out yourself. since it's kind of confusing. But if you're looking for a vehicle that has this, that just happens to have this bad block design, either do not buy it or get an extended warranty somehow, some way. It really is not a question of if the head gasket will fail, but when. The cost of repair is sky high. Fortunately, with this MKC, it was certified pre-owned, so it has 2 additional years of warranty, which will expire in July of 2024, which is a good thing. So that still gives us some time to use it, enjoy it. The coolant level is decreasing. I will certainly keep an eye on that, watch it very closely. I will definitely check the oil cap to see if it becomes chocolate milk under there. So in a way, if we are going to experience this problem, I really hope it happens before the warranty run out, or we're just going to sell it and let it be someone else's problem. But for additional resources, I might go back and add more of them, but for the time being, there is a TSB called 19-2346, which I believe came out in October of 2019, so that kind of talks about this issue with blowing head gaskets. And that's what I have for today. I know this was a little bit of a long video, but yeah, so that's what you pretty much need to know about 1.5, 1.6, 2.0, and also 2.3 liter EcoBoost. Inline 4s with their head gasket problems. I hope you found this information informative and helpful. If you still have comments about the issue, I would love to help. Just leave them in the comment section below. And on that note, I will see you next time.